now we are in complete harmony, almost like a Wrekmeister Harmony. What does that mean?
It comes from a movie by Bellatar.
Oh yeah,
called Wrekmeister Harmonies.
Yeah, I read that somewhere. I forget where, but I did.
I own that movie.
You do?
Yeah.
Is it good?
It's pretty good.
Okay.
I'd say of Bellatar's films, it's probably his most accessible.
Dude, I love their fights. Without any further ado, let's go over the latest Wrekmeister Harmonies album. We love to look at Carnage. Carnage. Wrekmeister Harmonies is a Chicago experimental music collective that combines elements of drone music, surrealism, serialism, post-rock, and heavy metal. It mostly is run by Jay Robinson, who's on lead vocals, but recently has featured Esther Shaw.
Esther Shaw's always been there. It's always pretty much centered around J.R. Robinson and Esther Shaw.
Okay, I think I read somewhere
a series of collaborators.
I read somewhere that J.R. Robinson was the big.
He's I think the founder, and then Esther Shaw is the secondaries. Okay, but it pretty much revolves around them. It's kind of like Jamie Stewart and whatever Asian woman he's with at the time, and then other people.
Every time you say that, it makes me uncomfortable because it's kind of like racism, but it's also true.
It's kind of true. Ever since I think it was his cousin or somebody left the band, it's pretty much just been a series of random people.
This time around, it features. Funny you mentioned Jamie Stewart, because this time around the group collected features Jamie Stewart on electronics and Thor Harris, who's the drummer of Swans, on drums.
Yeah. This
is an album I didn't know about, and Jonathan brought it up to me, and he said Jamie Stewart was involved, and I was interested, and I listened to the first track of this, and I was sold. I think this is I consider it, personally, to me, I think this is a post-rock album. That's the thing I think fits into it the most.
I guess if you had to give this one distinctive genre label, I'd say post-rock or post something like that.
Yeah, because I think I've seen a lot of descriptions calling this experimental. Not that I don't think it's experimental by any means, but
same post-rock vein that late Swans fits in.
Yeah,
and that I guess technically that's the genre to give it, but that's not really a great descriptor.
It's not the only description you can have it, because elements of metal, experimental music are on here. Drone music's on here, but I think post-rock is the biggest descriptor somewhere between a drone music and experimental rock release.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a lovely album in the extent of setting up these, I was going to say scenarios, but more settings.
It's
where you have these very beautiful, I don't want to say nature, but it could be reminiscent of a place like that. This natural, not nature though. Natural setting to its own degree.
Yeah.
And the constant environment around it changing either through the perspective of someone's eye or through apocalypse.
I think this album is in part about apocalypse. So taking what I've heard them talk about their music before, in this album in particular, and also knowing what they named themselves after. You don't name yourself after a Bellatar film for no fucking reason. Because you don't watch a Bellatar film for no fucking reason. You have to be a very specific type of person to seek out a Bellatar film. And so what their album, and especially this one, seems to be is what Bellatar's most famous films outside of his last film are usually about are these very slow existential pieces watching groups of people fall apart. So his most famous film, Satan Tango, is a 7-hour film about a town of people trying to deal with the fact that they were formerly a communist town over the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. What becomes of them? And basically, it's an existential piece where everything they do just crumbles around them.
Yeah.
And then the film that they're based off of, Wrekmeister Harmony, is when a weird carnival comes to their town and brings with it an existential representation of evil and dread and just
I love killer clowns from outer space.
Yeah. And just it's a bizarre thing that just tears the town apart slowly. What I gained from this album, because they described this album as we started with the idea of walking out your door.
Yeah.
And that this is kind of just a look at the end of the world through various people's eyes in like this small little community.
Okay.
And instead of it being
That's an
like,
interesting take that I didn't think about it, because I got apocalypse.
Yeah.
Because with the title called Midnight to 6, you're gonna think apocalypse.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
so it
But
seems
also, like, it could be various views of apocalypse, but I also kind of saw it very linear.
it's linear, like I think because most like of Bellatar's films are linear, but they like have just different viewpoints that they go through between like the series of events. Like they don't like show the same events twice. So it seems almost like this album is like the end of the world and then what comes after it. And instead of it being like the usual like apocalyptic visions, it's kind of just how much has really changed. Because, like, you have, like, the things, like, with the Ratcatcher where he's talking about all I've ever really wanted was just a place to lay my head. That never really changed, like, for that character because, like, that's all he needed beforehand, and now the world's over, and all he still really needs is just a place to lay his head at night.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have one still because he was homeless before, and now he's just still living in the cold to die.
Yeah.
It's kind of this weird, like, existentialist, brooding, slow-moving piece, just kind of taking this event, breaking down into these, like, small little chapters and perspectives of it, and just kind of going through them and just creating just existential piece on something pretty apocalyptic, which is something Bellatar himself does kind of heavily. His last film that he ever made, The Turin Horse, was literally, he described it as like a Nietzschean anti-creation story told through the perspective of just a small family. And it's literally just 6 days of them watching the world die around them, completely unaware of it, and they just live their lives until eventually there's nothing left but darkness.
What I interpret this album as, Midnight 6, it's very apocalyptic. It's brooding, it's beautiful at the same time, and it's like the beauty of the world around you slowly is going to fall apart. In the final moments of something, you finally embrace how beautiful it is before it is taken away from you. With the lovely keys that blend with the guitar so perfectly. The violins on this are fucking phenomenal and brilliant. The light vocals, the peaceful, calm percussion, the like very calm cymbals. It's either a cymbal or it's
I think it's chimes.
Chimes. That's
Yeah,
what it's
there's a
called.
lot
I
of
can't think of
chimes
it.
in this album, I'm pretty sure.
But especially that, how light it is and just passing, it works so well. Or not passing, pulsing. It works so well. JR's voice seems so ghostly, but like accepting of where he is. And then there's this almost like grandiose flashback or flash forward, finally accepting everything, just everything amplifies into this beautiful blend. Like it's all like being compressed into one segment. At one time, you're finally seeing the world for what it truly is. Then moving on to the next track, which is, it's off-putting. Something's wrong with this like natural world around you. Jamie Stewart pops up, so you know something's fucking wrong.
Jamie Stewart doesn't show up for anything less than the apocalypse.
As soon as you said that, like the first thing that popped in my head is like, I'm here, I'm queer, I'm gonna watch shit burn. It has this rich progression in the apocalypse with rich bells, moody, thick atmosphere. Truly a lovely track that gets into a more strange, off-putting assignment. I love the combination of vocals from JR and Jamie, even though they're not like on top of each other, harmonizing each other. I like that fit. It reminds me of when Eugene Robinson combined with Jamie on the last Shoo Shoo album at the end track.
Yeah.
Like that fit. Just like these two haunted figures next to each other. And now we're here and it's like two more ghosts at the Ghost Club meeting up for the apocalypse. That one I think you can describe is this from different viewpoints. I think I can describe that as someone who's not really willing to accept the pain of what the world's going to end. Coyotes of Central Park, you said, if someone just trying to find to rest their head and that's all that really is important to them.
Well, that's Ratcatcher.
Oh, Ratcatcher, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. But like the second half of this album, I enjoy it. It's fine. It has all fundamentally things that I enjoy from something that post-rock, I'm gonna put post-rock in parentheses. It has fundamentally great production, great soundscapes, but it doesn't fundamentally hit the the essential itch like the first two tracks does. It blends well with everything else, but it doesn't seem as fantastic. It doesn't seem as noteworthy, and I don't think it really
I feel like it
hit
doesn't,
that
but it's
scratch. I think when you combined it with the first half, it meets everything I want from like a post-rock album. Something around the lengths of something of that style. It meets that nature of what I want or I expect. It has great environment. It has great soundscapes. It has great production. It has great vocals. It fits a mood. It fits a setting. But the first two tracks are just so amazing in setting up everything else that this, like, everything in comparison to those last tracks doesn't mean as much.
I think it does and doesn't. I think if you take in like the theme of like this is the world after the apocalypse, but like what's really changed, it kind of makes sense. It turns the piece being greater than the sum of its parts kind of deal.
Yeah.
Where these last halves aren't meant to stand underground. They're not to exist outside of any point beyond the album. I know Coyotes of Central Park was the only one they kind of released as a single. My guess is that's probably because it's also the shortest track on here. I also feel like this is a band that doesn't really give that much of a shit about singles, given that the only reason I ever heard of this album existing was because I follow Jamie Stewart on Instagram.
Yeah.
He was posting about the fact that he was on the album and that we should all check it out when it comes out.
Yeah.
And I did, thankfully. And so I feel like it's one of those things like, yes, it ticks all the boxes. Like it's technically like grand. Like it doesn't hit the same itches that like these first bits do. I feel like that's also kind of the point.
And that doesn't necessarily make it bad because I still think it's a good album.
Still really
and
good.
Thinking about how much I enjoy it as the Grander Things helps make me realize I do really like this album still.
Yeah.
I still think it isn't as impressive as it could be, which could be because of the themes it's resonating with or the ideas it's trying to present, but also the end just doesn't stand out.
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally, if themes are going that way, it's fine. It has a purpose. I'm not going to knock you for that, but it just, personally with me, it doesn't resonate.
It still resonates with me.
You don't always have to end with something flashy or bold, but you have to end with something kind of that resonates. And like, to me, the beginning resonates. And when I think about how well the beginning starts and it broods and it builds, in the second half, it does pretty much the same thing, but not as impressive.
I think the ending of this album resonates with me, but just like in a different way. Because whereas like you were talking about, like we were talking about like Grimes, like, oh, we need to end on this like grandiose piece, or like, oh, you can end up like the most punchy. It resonates with me because the purpose of it. It like ends,
and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's wrong, but also for me, as experiencing this album, it just, I don't know, maybe if I went to the last track on its own, I feel like I would still enjoy the track, but when you comparison to everything beginning, it's a problem.
Yeah. It resonates. The ending of this film resonates with me the same way that like the ending of I won't go back to Bellatar, even though it's like the obvious one because that's who they're fucking named.
Yeah.
So like a Tarkovsky film ending. Like the ending of like Stalker or one of his fades doesn't really resonate because of like the strength. It's like not like the super strong ending, but like the ending like ties things together into like a thematic point.
Yeah.
And it's not like this like, oh, gotta go out on a big note. It goes out on this very soft kind of pointless note where like it doesn't seem to like fit, because like do you remember the ending of
I know
like
what
the
it
cup
is.
moves,
Yeah,
and like it doesn't really tie into like anything like plot wise, like
Yeah.
this wasn't really brought up before, this isn't something that like really matters, but like it kind of goes on with like the themes of the film.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this does. Like this doesn't resonate with me like because of like, oh man, it's such a cool ending, it's such like a cool note to leave off on, but it resonates with me because like it makes the rest of the thing fit. Like it seems like it's a part of the greater whole, and it makes me think about the picture as a whole.
Yeah, which is totally, it's a fine thing. I'm not saying that's like a type of thing that needs to be this way, because you can end the album in a various bunch of ways. Anything's possible, but I'm saying for me, just it's more, the ending is important, but it's not as important how the first two tracks really set this thing up, and the last three tracks don't repeat it completely holds put because there's new ideas being presented, but they're not as important as the first two. Which, in a theory, if you're talking about Apocalypse, the Apocalypse is important. That's the big no. Like, the 2 days after isn't going to be as important when someone was, like, eating cereal.
Yeah.
Or dead.
I mean,
Face down in a bowl of cereal.
because they had a heart attack while eating their cereal. The apocalypse had nothing to do with it. That would have happened anyways. Because they didn't watch their cholesterol.
I'm gonna leave it at that. I do think this is an impressive album.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, going through it, I was gonna give this like a 7. I think I was gonna give it 7+. But like thinking about how it builds atmosphere and the performances throughout and things I like of this nature, it fits that niche pretty well. It's something post-rocky in not a post-rock album, but something of that area, that zip code, that tri-state area that is post-rock.
Yeah, but it's like
something near that.
It's right on the edge. It's got a house right next to Swans.
It has to pay for business tax and home tax.
Yeah, because they got fucked over by where they built their land.
But keep in mind, I did enjoy this. Keep in mind, of course, if you're telling me this right now, I'm feeling. Right now, at this current moment, I'm thinking this is like an A-.
This is like a 9 to me.
Yeah,
I think
that's
this is
fine.
a great
That's
album.
personally. I think it has those points, but to me, it just doesn't.
Essential project.
Yeah, I would still give it an essential project. Even if it was 7+, I would still give it an essential project because I think there's groundbreaking material on here.